Tony D and Little Joan, and this is, I call it Odds and Ends, a video where I sort of tie up some loose ends on some of my other videos and dip into what's going on generally with the channel. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Thanks for checking out my books. You have been checking out my books. Getting some sales today, doggy, on this cold South Jersey day. Freezing cold. So thank you for that. Here you go, John. That's for you. So first up, I just finished up the last episode of Reacher. And I already reviewed that, so this is my official sort of wrap-up, quick review. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. Possibly, I don't know. I don't have much to say other than it was decent. It was decent. It was very satisfying. A lot of fan service in this. Good ending. Generally, still not as strong as the first one. I think the first one was much stronger in terms of the cliffhangers and everything. I think that's mostly due to the fact of the kind of story this is. The first Reacher story felt like it was better suited for a television episode kind of deal. This one feels like it would have been better suited as a movie. They probably could have done this thing in 2 hours. It just rolled out like that. But some surprises, not a lot. I preferred, again, the first one because there were a lot of twists and turns that I didn't see coming. This one was very sort of straightforward. But I did enjoy it. I did enjoy Robert Patrick. He kind of chewed up the scenery towards the end, and he gave a great performance for a guy his age. He's a little long in the tooth to be the bad guy that punches people, but he pulled it off. So I think it was a good time, and I think if you watch the first season, I think you'll be fine with the second season. So that's basically it. A thumbs up to season 2 on Reacher. Now, other things. Things are sort of heating up with my video about Eric July, and I'm trying to avoid getting sucked into the internet drama surrounding him and Ethan Van Sciver and stuff. I know I'm talking about it, and technically that's kind of getting sucked in, but I don't want to argue with these guys. If they're not ready, and I don't, some of you have said, oh, you don't have the timeline right or the details right. I'm sure that's true. I didn't follow it that closely. But my point, I think, remains, I don't think this fight is good for the fan base. I think it can be good for individuals. And I explained that in my members only video. If you want to see it, you got to be a member. I'm doing members only video thing. But in a nutshell, I think this is just further dividing the fan base. When we have a bigger enemy, quote unquote, the bigger enemy is sort of the corporate comics as they stand now. They're woke, they're terrible, and the bigger problem in the comic book industry is, as I keep saying, the price. The price is not for normies. This is a niche marketplace. Just not $20 a comic is just too much money. It's just too much money. There are ways to reduce that. I know ways. Some of them aren't great. And some of you would go, but that would reduce the paper quality. I don't really care about paper quality. I don't. I do care about the story, first and foremost. After that, I care about the art. And after that, that's about it. I mean, the price. The price is really, for me to buy a $20 comic, the story's got to blow me away. It's got to just blow me away. Now, there are some comics that, hey, it's worth $20 for a graphic novel. But a lot of them just aren't. A lot of them are just okay. And that's why we're not getting people buying in. So, I know there's a lot of discussion. If you want to get into it a little more, I'm happy to talk about it on Sunday during the live stream, where we do it live. This Sunday's live stream might be pushed back an hour. I'm doing a show in Toms River, New Jersey. I think I'll be back in time. I'm 90% sure I'll be back in time because it ends at 4 and I should be able to drive home. But the weather, the roads are a little icy, so I don't know. If I don't get out of there until like 4:30 and things are really bad on the drive home, then I might be a little late. But I think I'm in the queue for 7 o'clock. So tune in for that. But in terms of other stuff going on with the channel, I spent today was the first day I showered in 3 days, which was just too long for me. If I can go a day, right? I can go a day. 2 was pushing it, but man, I don't know why I went the third day. It's the snow, I guess, that drives me to do that. I just don't like. I get up, I get dressed, I go shoveled. That's why. And then I just didn't feel like getting washed the rest of the day. But man, 3 days was just too grungy for me. In terms of comics and events, again, don't forget Tom's River on Sunday, tomorrow, 10 to 4. That's at the Elks Lodge. The Valenzano Winery event was pushed back until Friday, the 26th. I'm also doing an event. I believe that's in Cape May. Nope, that's Crestwood Manor in Manchester, New Jersey, and that's on Monday at 2 p.m. That's for residents, but if you're a resident or you have family there, you probably can get in. I posted the wrong comic on the Web Comic Factory today. You may have noticed. TNA usually I don't post until Sunday. Today I posted it last night. I was half asleep when I wrote the joke, which is a very old joke. It's just my variation on it. I'll do the anti-war comic today for tomorrow. What else? What else is going on? I guess that's about it. Not a whole lot of drama going on Twitter. Just the usual nonsense. James Lindsay warning everybody. Carl Benjamin's doing a lot of posting, and that's been good. I've been watching a little more Lotus Eaters recently. I just don't have time to watch all these podcasts. There's so many of them that I want to watch. So I take turns between like the Lotus Eaters, Louder with Crowder, Scott Adams, and of course I usually watch Sticks and Hammer every day. His is a little shorter, and that's part of the reason. But part of the reason I just sort of jibe with him. I don't know. I like his style. He takes off the weekends, which is both good and bad for me because I love to listen to his stuff on a drive. It's usually perfect because I usually don't go more than an hour out of my way. But on the weekends, when I do a lot of shows, a lot of times he doesn't do something, and then it's kind of like, do I listen to Friday again, or do I just play music and sing to myself? What else? So on the live stream, we'll be doing it live, and we'll be talking about the box office, the usual stuff there. Not a whole lot going on with movies. Things feel like they're really winding down. I guess we're hitting a weird moment. I had a weekend where I had almost no trailers, and then this week, man, I'm about 8 trailers behind. There's so many trailers. I don't know what I'm going to do with them all. I was tempted to do like a 4-part trailer like I do once in a while, and then I said, I better save some for the weekend because you never know. Sometimes you hit the weekend and there's no trailers. But there's a lot of weird stuff out, and it just doesn't seem like any of these projects are hitting movie theaters. And these aren't small projects. They seem big, you know. They have stars in them. They have decent budgets, but they don't seem to get distribution at all. They seem to go right to streaming, which, you know, if you keep the budget under a certain amount of money, you know, if you can shoot a movie for 100K, you can sell it if it's halfway decent to most streaming, you know, services and make your money. You know, if you can make something for 100K and sell it for 300K, you made your money. You know, you pay back your investors and there's money left over. And the numbers are usually a little higher than that, but still. You know, it depends on who you are. It depends on the movie, the quality of the movie. And it depends on the subject matter. I'll tell you one movie they just keep pushing the hell out of, and I just don't see much of an audience for it. It's called Origin. Ava DuVernay, man, they are pushing this movie. And I had initially stumbled across the trailer months ago, and then I saw it was in the theaters. They had released it. I guess they kind of gave it a limited release, but now they're coming back with like more of a full release. I'm not sure why. It doesn't seem to do well on its little minor release, but you know, go figure. Hollywood. Ava DuVernay, man, like her projects just get pushed to the front of the line for some reason. Kudos to her agent, whoever he is. Man, you're doing some good work there. I wish I had you as my agent. That's you. That's sometimes the explanation for some of these projects. You know, it's not that it's particularly woke, although that's a huge factor these days. It's not that the person is a name. It's just that they have an amazing agent that's tied in with enough studios that, you know, they cut these deals where they take the studio wants, say, Project X, and you know they want it. So, but you also represent not only one of the key players in Project X, but you also represent key players in Projects Y and Z. So you cut a deal with the studios. Hey, listen, we'll give you a slightly better rate on Project X, which we know you want, but you gotta take in Project Y and Z and give us that distribution. And the studio wants content anyway, so it's kind of a win-win unless they're pushing a stinker on them, which does happen. But no, as the famous William Goldman, the patron saint of screenwriters, once said, no one in Hollywood knows anything. And it's true. They don't know what's going to be a hit. No one does. I don't know what's going to be a hit. I can tell you what I think is good. I can tell you what I wish were a hit. But it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes they release something and it's great, but no one goes sees it. You know, it hits at a weird time. The example I always point to is Mask of the Phantasm, which was the Batman animated movie that they released in theaters back in the 90s during kind of the height of the cartoon from that period, which I thought was just awesome. All kinds of awesome. So the Mask of the Phantasm was an attempt to kind of mainline the animation of Batman, that particular animation. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work. It came out, I think, in January. It did a little bit of business, but overall, in fact, you know what? Let's take a look at the numbers and see actually what it did. Wonder if it's on here. It was a while back. And hasn't. There we go. Going back in the database. It's about 30 years. Okay, here it is. Yeah, it only did, looks like it only did about 5.6 million. And yeah, didn't do great. Now back then, and this is 30 years ago, I'm not sure what this cost. It was animated, so it did cost more than 5.6 million. So it probably tanked in terms of the money. Maybe 6 million if you count the Blu-ray and sales. But generally, most fans of Mask of the Phantasm consider that movie pretty damn good. I thought it was good. Worth seeing. But it's a shame it didn't go anywhere. Didn't go anywhere. I think part of the problem with Mask of the Phantasm, it was too inside baseball. It was too. They should have done a more basic Batman, like meat and potatoes Batman, versus Arkham Asylum or something like that. Batman with the Joker and all the classic ones. If they were going to release it, in theaters, it should have been like something like that. But what are you going to do? You can't tell these guys anything. You really can't. Mask of the Phantasm, like, that's just not a good name. It's okay. It's okay for a comic book. But you need a better title. I'm big on titles, man. I think titles really impact stuff. Which is part of why, circling back to the comics, I don't think Isom does as well, because I don't think that's a solid name. I mean, I get it. It's the name of the character. But it doesn't really mean anything to me, that name, Isom. Alpha Corps is slightly better because it is a corps of people, like the Marine Corps, Alpha Corps. Like, that kind of denotes something slightly different. Same thing with Cyberfrog. Now, Cyberfrog to me is a little too on the nose, but it's okay, in terms of a title. But, I don't want to get too deep into the comics. A lot of things. The weird thing is, I'm getting a lot of hits on the comic stuff, but I think that's just mainly because of the drama, not so much the comics. And the weird thing too, and I thought of this later after I did my members only video, so I didn't talk about this there. Dick Masterson, for some reason, has gone up against Eric July, hammer and tong. Just, for a long time. I think he's finally done with it, but he just can't, leave it alone, which is odd to me. I guess it's just something he figured he could parasititize. Is that the word? Parasititize. When you sort of parasite, drain off the fans. And but I think, although Ethan Van Sciver means well generally, I do think he's ending up in that camp because he's sort of on the same side as Dick, and I think this has gone on too long. So I think this is really dividing the fan base. I'm going to be at a show tomorrow at Tom's River, and I can tell you, probably no one in the room will be talking about either of these comics, which is a shame because, this is the fan base. I'm going to ask people. We'll see. Maybe a few of them, maybe if you're there, we could chat about it live. I don't mind talking about comics live when there's some downtime at the table and whatnot. But seems to me what everybody's going for these days in the world of comics are back issues of Marvel and DC, classic stuff. And no one's talking about the new stuff. And I think 100% the reason is, and I keep saying it, but I'm going to say it one more time, it's the story. The comics from those eras have good stories, great stories sometimes. And you can read them and you can go, wow, what's going to happen next? Isn't this interesting? And you talk about them. And yes, the art is also fantastic, but it's the story that gets you talking about them. It's not just the art. It's not just the talent. It's the story. And if you don't have that story, no one talks about you. Not in a good way. You can drum up all this drama outside the story in the comic, and some of it's interesting. Don't get me wrong. I follow it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't do your comic a bit of good. I'm not a. I feel like for the Pineys, which isn't a comic, but a story, I can talk about the story, and there's interesting facets in that story, and I do that all the time at shows. Now I don't do it a lot of times in my videos because I want people to ask, and I could easily in about, I'd say about a dozen videos, talk about it to the point at which I would run out of stuff to talk about. So there's that issue too. You don't want to burn people out on it, but there's just not a lot of talk of the stories going on in comics, and there should be, and there was back in the 80s. The 80s, I think, were the last time people talked about the stories. We talked about what was going on in Secret Wars. We didn't just talk about who was drawing it and who was writing it and what was going down in Marvel and DC. We talked about the actual events in the comic. We talked about what's the deal with this new Spider-Man outfit. Is he going to keep that? Can that work? Isn't this going to change the whole comic? Could the Hulk really lift up a mountain range if he got that mad? That seems crazy. How could that work? He's got his two hands on a piece of the mountain, but how could the mountain structurally stay together and him lift it above him? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Stuff like that we would talk about. And these were events that actually happened in Secret Wars. Sometime after that, and I'm not sure when, people stopped talking about the story. I guess it was the Image era. Yeah. The Image era is where we started talking about the artist rather than the story. It transitioned then from, hey, isn't this an amazing story, to, hey, isn't this an amazing artist? And sometime after that is when I think we lost our way. We started getting into chromium covers and, special editions. And, the highest selling comic of all time is X-Men #1. But the reason it sold so many is they put 5 different versions of it out. 5 different covers with 5 different backup stories. And I'll give them credit for putting at least a different backup story in each one. That was something to buy. But that's why it sold 8.1 million comics. Joan, you didn't eat your treat. Your treat. That's a treat, right? Yeah, that's a treat. Here. Take this and take your treat. Even Spawn, Spawn had so much hype behind it. Then it came out, and it sold well. But, I worked for a guy back in the day who had so many copies of Spawn #1, he sold them by the pound to get rid of them, and he still has them. So that should tell you something. There's just not enough comic readers. And there could be, but the barrier to entry has to be a lot easier. And now that these crowdfunding guys are fighting amongst each other, that's not helping at all. They were kind of on their way, and they had kind of stumbled upon this new system of getting comics to the people, and now the fighting amongst themselves, I don't really see. I don't think this goes to a positive place, and I think they should stop. And it doesn't matter who's right. It doesn't. Unless somebody broke the law or actually physically damaged the other guy's career, all this is doing is destroying both camps and pitting fan against fan. I don't care if you like Isom. It's fine. I like some of it on some level. I don't care if you like Cyberfrog. I haven't read it. It looks fine. I'm into what I'm into. You're into what you're into. And everybody can be into whatever they're into. I have fans who are into my stuff. So let's all coexist. Because if we coexist, maybe we'll get some cool crossovers. I would love to see a crossover with these characters. Why not? And I thought we were well on the way. I mean, Ethan did a cover for Ison. I thought, oh, wow, that'll be cool. And then someday it'll be Cyberfrog versus Ison, or Cyberfrog teams up with Ison. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be better than this fight? I think so. Anyhow, that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. This has been Odds and Ends. I think I've wrapped up everything. Yeah. The only other thing I'll say is the YouTube algorithm continues to confound me. I mean, look at my hits today, or yesterday, I'll say. 1 and 5. I have over 3,000 subscribers. How do I only get 1 and 5 hits? And then a few days ago, 111. Here's the comic one. My review on Isom's now over 1,000 with 46. I don't get it. And then this one here, it's got 88 hits. More on the comic book stuff, but it's got 14 comments. But this one has 111 hits, but only 4 comments. So you can't tell me it's the engagement. So I don't know what the hell. Here's 169, 8 comments. It's like YouTube's algorithm is nonsense to me. I'm doing much better on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble, by the way, in terms of the growth at least. So join me on Rumble. I know I post late, but I can only post these things so quickly. I got a lot of stuff to do. Trying to live my life, damn it. Anyhow, that's it for me. We'll see you in the next one.